Welcome to the Chester Centurion podcast, where we uncover the journeys, challenges, and insights of business leaders and entrepreneurs. I'm your host, Alan Bark, and in each episode, we dive into real stories of growth, resilience, and the mindset needed to succeed. Today, I'm joined by Vaughn, the Managing Director of Rawson Digital, a seasoned entrepreneur with over 30 years in the photocopier industry, who took the leap at 57 to start his own business. What started as a copier company has since expanded into renewable energy sector, covering solar, EV charging, and air source heat pumps. In this conversation, Vaughn shares his journey from corporate life to business ownership, the lessons he's learned about adaptability, and the importance of knowing your numbers. We discuss the realities of entrepreneurship, the misconceptions about running a business, and why spotting an opportunity is key to success. If you're thinking about starting your own business or looking for ways to navigate challenges, this episode is packed with valuable insights. So let's dive in. So Vaughn, welcome to the Chester Centurion podcast. Good to have you on today.
Yeah, thank you, Alan. Thanks for talking to me.
Yeah, you're very welcome. So before we get started today, I'd love to know a little bit more about the business, what it is you do, and maybe how long you've been trading.
Yeah, sure. So we're a little bit diverse. We've been trading altogether. This is our 13th year. Our sort of core business, if you like, is we started selling photocopiers. And I've been in the photocopying industry for quite a few years, too many to recall possibly. But now we also have a renewables business. We do solar, EV, air source heat pumps, electrical installations, that type of thing. So a little bit diverse, and I'll try and explain how that came about a little bit later on.
Oh, cool. So always interested in what motivated you to start your own business, and what was the driving force behind your decision to take on this entrepreneurial role?
So I'd been in the copy industry for 30 plus years, generally working for a manufacturer as a regional manager. And I moved to a large sort of global organization who were based down in London. And that was incredibly intense, backwards and forwards to London, trying to set up a new sales team based in Manchester. And it was quite stressful. And I was bringing up my two boys on my own at the time. So I wanted to sort of maybe take a bit of pressure off. So I went back into a sales role for a smaller family-run business as just a salesman, or back on the tools, as I say, Mm-hmm. But the industry is unbelievably corrupt. You can't. It's hard to imagine, but it's not. It's not a really nice industry to be in, if I'm honest. Mm-hmm. You sometimes had to explain to the customer why you weren't going to rip, or that you weren't going to rip them off first, and then try and do a sales job. So it was quite difficult. So the small company that I went to work for, they've been trading for about 20 years and not really had much dealings with an independent copier company. And I was quite unimpressed the way they sort of looked after their customers, managed their business. And after a few years of working for them, I thought, I'm sure I could have a go at this myself, which is what I did. And I started my business quite late in life. I was 57 when I started the business. And everybody sort of said, "What are you doing?" Me included.
Wow. So, a lot of people start like that. A lot of people look at the business they're operating in at the time and go, "I could do this better." But 57, it just shows you that you're never too late to make that leap and start your own business. And sure. Do you remember the day that you made that decision, and how did it feel?
Yeah, I do. I do remember the date quite well, actually. So it felt quite terrifying, to be honest, because although I was 57, I still had quite a hefty mortgage and a young child. I recently met somebody else, had a 4-year-old daughter. Mm-hmm. So it was a challenge, and not no real money in the bank at the time, just a few £1,000. So it was scary.
And it's a common theme that people that start their own business go through that. And I've asked this question a few times now, and it's very, very similar answers. It's almost scary to start your own business. There is
Yeah.
definitely fear, but then a decision that doesn't fill you full of a little bit of excitement and a little bit of fear is probably the wrong decision in the first place. So, you've obviously made an incredible business and built an incredible business on the back of that day. What are some of the misconceptions about running a business, and how do you go about addressing them?
I think some of the misconceptions are that it gives you some sort of freedom from what you were sort of doing before, and life's going to be sort of full of roses almost, you know. And it's not really a misconception, but what I find a lot of people do is because of the fear factor of starting a business on their own, they'll engage with somebody else and they'll do it as a joint venture with somebody.
Mm-hmm.
They'll have a business partner from day one, and whilst that may work in some cases, I think that's always a bit of a danger.
Mm-hmm. What do you mean by that?
I've seen many people start sort of businesses where one person is a bit more committed, a bit more hardworking than the other. One feels that the other person isn't really pulling their weight, or they're taking too much out of the business, and it can prove to be very difficult. And it's often difficult when times are challenging. When times are challenging, and you've just got yourself as to rely on, or yourself to be concerned about, then it's a much easier. It's much easier to deal with.
Interesting.
In my view.
Again, not an uncommon story where people that join as partnerships start to resent each other because the other one's not pulling the weight. And it's so important to get that crystal clear communication up front to avoid that.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Yeah, really interesting. Thank you for that. And so, how do you maintain a work-life balance as a business owner? And do you have any sort of personal goals or habits that keep you motivated and focused?
So the work-life balance is a little bit easier now, but when I started the business, there wasn't really much work-life balance. It was more work, because you've always got that, in my case, and I'm sure for a lot of people who start their own businesses, it's that fear of, you have to pay your way. You've got to make sure there's money in the bank to pay your mortgage, look after your family or whatever. So if you're not driven to that extent, then you're probably going to fall into some sort of difficulties unless you're very fortunate, but you still do need to have some work-life balance, so it was always, the weekends were quite precious with the family, and we always managed to have a family holiday, even if it was somewhere, sort of reasonably local, not too expensive,
Mm-hmm.
So
how do you stay focused in work? What are the drivers behind staying really focused at your work?
It's still, for me, it's still very much a fear factor. I think if you take your foot off the gas, or you take your eye off the ball, or you're not prepared to embrace change, then, if your business stagnates, then you're going to start going backwards. It's like having money in the bank, if you like. If you don't invest it correctly, it's just going to dwindle, and your business will do exactly the same.
Mm-hmm.
So since COVID, it's been very, very challenging for us to get our business back to pre-COVID levels and sort of beyond. So that's been a massive focus for us, So yeah,
okay. So the key here is, a business is either growing or it's shrinking. There's no in between. You don't just have a flat line in business. You're either getting bigger or you're getting smaller. And to continue
definitely
getting bigger year after year after year, you have to be focused, and that drives your motivation as well, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
That's a good point. Really good point. The business landscape, probably faster than it's ever been, is changing day by day. How do you stay adaptable and open to that change? And are there any specific strategies that you use to be open to change?
We are in the copier industry now, particularly. That is undergoing change and has been undergoing change for quite a few years. People talk about the paperless office. I've been talking about the paperless office since I was in the business, like 30 years. But it's certainly, the paper output is certainly diminishing. But although we're pretty well, 90% of our sales are hardware to small and medium-sized offices, you've got to look at other sort of options to continue to maintain that business growth. So there's software that for document management, archive and retrieval software. There are other things, and we are actually looking at the moment. We're going down to London soon with HP to look at some meeting room technology that apparently is taking the market by storm, because we are, we deal with small and medium-sized companies, so we're in the company space. So there are lots of other things that we can sell them apart from a photocopier, but we just haven't really focused our attentions too much on that, really. But we are now looking to maybe explore those opportunities in a bigger detail, or with a greater focus.
And then, of course, you've added the green energy solutions onto the business as well.
Yeah.
Where did that come from?
So the green energy, COVID hit us quite hard in the copy industry. We lost about 75% of our turnover literally overnight for a fairly, thankfully it was a fairly short period of time. But when I say a short period of time, it was for almost 12 months. So we did struggle to sort of come through that. But during that period, we just made a decision as a company to start using electric vehicles where we could, and we were looking for electric vehicle charging point for the business, and buying that was a massive challenge. And I thought this should not be so difficult to buy an electric vehicle charger. And me and my daughter, because we weren't as busy as we would like to have been because of the COVID situation, we looked into it, and we could buy a charger for sensible money. However, they were insistent that we became a EV charger dealer, which we didn't really want to do. But we took that on board to benefit ourselves initially. We thought we'd maybe sell them on the web, just to sort of make a token gesture into becoming a dealer. And then once we'd bought the charger, installed it ourselves, we thought, maybe this could work as a bit of a spin-off. And because we've got a direct sales force anyway, who weren't doing much because of the COVID sort of situation, we utilized the sort of contacts that we had on our database, and me and my daughter sort of approached some people and with the social media, and in the first year we sold 500 chargers, which was absolutely massive at the time. So it sort of started there, and then continued once COVID had finished. I got back into the sort of photocopier side, my daughter, and then my daughter's partner, who was a very, very clever guy. He's got a 1-1 in aeronautical engineering. He joined, and then we started doing solar, and sold it to some of the companies that we'd sold EV to, and it really developed from there. And it's now become, in terms of the two businesses, it's certainly doing the bigger turnover than the copier side. I'm not saying it's more profitable, but it's certainly doing the bigger turnover. But it's really going places, and that employs 12 people now, I think.
And that all started because you weren't happy with how difficult it was to find a charger.
Yeah, basically.
I love that.
Basically.
And there's opportunity all around us, isn't there? And it's being able to spot those opportunities. And I guess that's the entrepreneurial spark.
Yeah,
most people would walk by that opportunity without noticing it. But you instantly recognized it as an opportunity. And
that makes me sound awfully clever, but I'm not really. It's just quite fortuitous. But yeah, I don't really see myself as an entrepreneur. I see myself as a terrified businessman who sort of needs to feed the family and pay the employees wages, really. So it's a responsibility in a way.
And I get that. I do get that. But there's also, there's also recognizing opportunity that's in front of you and
Of
saying,
course. Yeah.
there's something we can do here, which is pretty cool, Vaughn, to be
Yeah.
honest.
Thank you. Thank you.
So could you give us a glimpse into the future plans for the business, and what do you envisage as the next chapter of your journey?
So, as I said before, staying sort of static in terms of your turnover is quite a bad thing, But in the copier industry, we've identified a new opportunity for us because it's a very incestuous business. Lots and lots of small to medium-sized businesses like us around. So we've always tried to, look after other businesses, certainly sort of Rico dealers. But the Rico dealers in close proximity to us, Liverpool, Warrington, have all been sort of gobbled up by a VC company who are basically just going to strip those businesses back to the bare bones, make as much money as they can, put them all together and sell them on again. So as a consequence, the service that they're offering is pretty poor. We know that those companies are very much still in that, the dishonest contract sort of situation. Commission-based salesmen, walking away from deals, making 10, 15, 20, 30,000 pounds of profit and all those unpalatable things that go on in the industry. So we've opened an office in Warrington and we're looking to open an office in Liverpool. So we're for us, after 12 years, we're on a massive expansion drive at the minute. So we've doubled the size of our workforce, which sounds very grand, but, we've gone from sort of 3 to 6 people, so that's what we're doing in terms of the copier side. So we actually grew the business by 16% last year, which is, which I'm very pleased with. And we're looking to increase that growth for this coming year. And on the EV and the solar side, that's also got its challenges because, the EV was great on its own, but that was always going to be short-lived. Solar, we tacked on the solar just because we knew that the EV sales were going to drop off, which they have. We're only selling about 70 to 80 EVs a year now, compared to the 500 we did in year one. But solar has massively taken off. We've, I think the biggest job we've done so far was for 4,500 solar panels on a roof at Networld Sports, which we're very proud of that job. Huge job. So we've also expanded now to do air source heat pumps. We're going to be looking at air-to-air heat pumps, which is a bigger model. And also we're looking to expand into domestic and commercial electrical contracting. So it opens up the window. So we're not reliant on one product to keep us in business and to ensure that continual growth. So you've got to always have that plan, and the other thing is always remember to invest the money and profits back into your business.
Yeah,
that's massively important. So
to continue the growth.
Yeah.
So it's been an absolute pleasure having you on today, Vaughn. I've really enjoyed talking to you, and the way you've diversified the business during COVID and continue to really focus on growth. The fact that you started the business, and please take this the right way, so late in life, but made it an incredible success was just really cool to hear. And thank you for that. But I've got one more question, and it's a biggie, if you'll allow me.
Yeah.
So what advice, or what 3 pieces, we're gonna challenge you with 3 pieces of advice, Vaughn. What 3 pieces of advice would you offer to aspiring entrepreneurs who are just starting their journey, or maybe someone who's facing some challenges in their business?
So, yeah, it's quite interesting. If we start something new, then the numbers are of paramount importance, and they were for me when I started the business from day one. And I always look at, this is going to cost me X. So the worst case scenario. So let's say when I started the photocopy business, I worked from home, firstly from the bedroom, so I didn't really add much. But I did lease a vehicle, so I had those are my overheads. But I also had a mortgage and a young family, and so I had a target of what I needed to earn on a month-to-month basis. But I also had a worst case scenario backup plan, because had I not been able to get to that point in the first 3 to 6 months, I needed an opt out, if you can understand that.
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
So I was looking at what is the best case scenario, but what is the worst case scenario? And I think if you've got to have those two things clear in your mind, and you've got to look at the worst case. And the worst case is it doesn't work and it costs me money. And ideally you want the worst case if it costs you money to get out before the business fails.
Yeah. Interesting.
So that sounds a bit negative, possibly, but it's not meant to be negative in any way.
Yeah, no, I think know your numbers without a shadow of a doubt. I mean, we chatted to one of the top accountants in Chester yesterday, and that was clear from him as well. You've got to know your numbers.
Yeah.
Keep your overheads manageable. Keep them down to as low as you possibly can when you're starting.
Yeah.
Set targets for what you need to achieve in the best case.
Sure.
But also be prepared for the worst case scenario as well. I think that's gold dust right there, Vaughn, for anyone starting their own business.
Yeah.
And anything to add to that?
You've got to understand your market. It's no good having an idea of something that you know little or nothing about. You've got to understand the market, and you've got to understand the potential in the market, and you've got to understand where that business is going to come from.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
There's some good advice there for anyone starting their own business.
Yeah.
Vaughn, thank you so much. I've really enjoyed this. It's been a pleasure having you on the podcast.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you for your time. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, hopefully we can have a chat soon.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Cheers, Alan. Bye-bye.